15-minute cities are the idea of designing urban environments so that most daily necessities and services such as work, shopping, education, health and leisure should be easily reachable within 15 minutes.
Protests are popping up around the world against something called 15-minute cities.
Creepy local authority bureaucrats would like to see your entire existence boiled down to the duration of a quarter of an hour.
A pretty dire warning there, but it's one that's been repeated by a lot of people. The 15-minute city concept has only been around a couple of years, but already many are worried it will end their personal freedoms by stealth. They say the plans involve banning traffic from moving between neighbourhoods and replacing the car with public transport, cycling and walking. Its supporters, though, they say it really means that everything will be within 15 minutes of your doorstep, so things like shops, schools and hospitals. But there have already been massive protests in Oxford. However, are they confusing 15-minute cities with the unpopular traffic control methods? Welcome to Oxford, home to one of the world's greatest universities, once the centre of the British motor industry and now the rather confused front line of the fight against the 15-minute city concept.
Stand up for your rights and stop being puppets of the government.
This dystopian plan will see roads in some of Britain's most iconic towns and cities being blocked off, with cars being restricted to certain areas, all overseen by number plate recognition cameras installed everywhere.
The City Council says it wants to reduce the number of cars going through the centre, making cycling safer, improving public transport and reducing air pollution, allowing children to play on the streets once again. Protesters, though, have a different view.
I'm here because the LTNs that have been imposed in East Oxford are affecting people I know, people I love, and making it difficult for them to go about their business.
You know, it's just like an open prison. We have children, we don't want our children growing up in a surveillance society.
It will be bad for businesses, bad for jobs, bad for families, bad for freedom.
Smart cities, low traffic neighbourhood and the so-called clean air zones. They're all about controlling you, charging you money and promoting the climate economy.
At the centre of the storm is Carlos Moreno. He's a Franco-Colombian academic at the Sorbonne who coined the phrase.
The 15-minute city is an attempt to reconcile the city with the humans that live in it.
Moreno works as a special advisor to the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo. Together they have turned the once car-friendly city into a cyclist dream. He describes a 15-minute city as one where everything you could ever need is within a quarter of an hour walk from your front door.
It does mean that it takes us slightly longer to get home because we used to be able to take a shortcut, but giving up 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes on the journey home is well worthwhile if it means the street we live on is a lot safer.
For Moreno and many other city planners, this is an essential step in making our neighbourhoods more livable. For his opponents, these ideas are just another way for governments to control us.
Obviously, they were never going to listen to the people because they have a plan.
Is it worth putting children at risk to somehow save the planet in 100 years' time?
What? Are you serious? Do you really think I want to be watched every second of the day?
And even a few members of the British governing party share the same fears.
Will the leader please set aside some time in this House for a debate on the international socialist concept of so-called 15-minute cities and 20-minute neighbourhoods? The second step after these zones will take away personal freedoms as well.
Whatever you think of them, it appears the 15-minute city is here to stay. Well, despite those very vocal protests, 15-minute cities do appear to be very popular among the public. YouGov polling last month shows that 62% of Brits support the idea and less than a quarter oppose it. Even among Conservative voters, 57% are in favour, while less than a third are against. But of course, these kinds of concepts are very popular until they happen in somebody's backyard. So we sent our producer Salahuddin to Oxford to find out what all the fuss was about.
Are you familiar with the concept of 15-minute cities?
I've heard about it, and that's rubbish, nonsense. Absolutely nonsense.
Why so?
Because traffic. They think that doing the LTN, helping, people commuting and everything, that's actually causing a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
And I used to be a bus driver.
Oh, I see.
That's absolutely a chaos. If you want to get a 15 minutes drive, now it takes at least half an hour, 45 minutes. They made a survey, asked about what 63% of the people said they do not want the LTN, yet they did it. Why did you even make the survey?
15-minute cities work for the people that live within that, but they're just pushing the traffic further out.
I went to get my bike repaired, and they're suffering as well. You know, the cycle shop, repair shop, and he can see his businesses have gone right down.
Well, the planet is, you know, dying, and if we don't make radical changes, then, you know, it will be too late.
And what do you like about 15-minute cities?
The concept that everything is within a very short distance of one's home is a very good idea.
Yeah.
It will reduce the need to travel further distances for essentials. They certainly have made it much more easy for me to take my children to school.
If you do try to do an improvement, you have to think broadly.
Yeah.
There is no public transport adequate, so you have to use the private transport to go to any shopping centre.
Yeah.
I can't go by bicycle like the council would like me, because I broken 6 bones to go with a bicycle accident.
What kind of shop or business do you own, if you don't mind?
Barbershop.
Barbershop.
Yeah.
So does it limit customers coming to your barbershop?
Yes. Parking wise and just time wise. I've got a lot of people that I know that they keep saying to me, if the bollards weren't up, we'd be coming, but they haven't got any place or any time to do it.
I get it that they're trying to reduce the fumes, but in the morning when the traffic's built up, surely with the cars standing still with the engines running, that's radiating more carbon monoxide for the people that are walking past.
OK, let's bring in our guests now. And on the left side, we have a couple of guests in favour of the 15-minute city concept. We have Brent Toderian, Vancouver's former chief planner, and Niamh Moore, a professor of urban governance and development at the University College Dublin. To the right, we have James Woudhuysen, a spiked columnist and professor at the London South Bank University, and the environmental campaigner Arthur Pendragon is also joining us. Welcome to all 4 of you. Arthur, I'd like to start with you. You were at the protest in Oxford. Why did you go? What are your main concerns?
Well, my main concerns is the way they're selling it to us. They're telling us it's all for environmental reasons, but that's absolute rubbish. I mean, ever since Sadiq Khan decided to find the magic money tree in London, they all want a piece of the pie. Now, if you take it to its conclusion, at best, everybody pays. And if everybody pays, there is absolutely no change to the emissions. The local government make a lot of money, and basically nothing changes. But unfortunately, everybody isn't in a position to pay. So what I'm concerned about is a lot of people are going to be forced off the road. Basically, the too poor. And you know, the underclass and the working classes are going to be forced off the road because they can't pay these things.
Arthur,
and the whole point is it doesn't work. I mean, they're going to send you out to ring roads. They're going to send you round ring roads. There's going to be more emissions, and you'll be putting 15, 20 miles onto what was what? A mile or a mile and a half journey.
There you go, Niamh. Perhaps you could answer that one for me.
Thanks very much, Matthew. I have a fundamentally different understanding of what the 15-minute city is meant to be about. I suppose in that the 15-minute city is actually about reducing the number of car journeys by making sure that people have what they need close to home. So it's not about, I've never heard any payment referenced in any of it. Essentially, it's about trying to ensure that people save time and save money by being able to access the facilities they need in their local neighbourhoods. So it's absolutely not about penalties or punishing or fines. This is very different to the ULEZ designation that Sadiq Khan has introduced in London, which is essentially payment for movement. What the 15-minute city is, to me, is about minimising the amount of movement that people have to do. If they choose to do it, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing stopping them. But the idea is that you would have to meet...
Yeah, Niamh, you say minimise, but Arthur just made the point that if you can't just cross into the next zone, you have to go out on a ring road and all the way round. Actually increases the distance of your journey.
But of course you can cross into the next zone. Nobody's preventing that. That's people's choice.
Yes, the 15-minute preventing that. That's exactly what they're preventing. That's the whole idea of the zoning.
But I think what we're conflating here is ULEZ zoning with 15-minute cities, and they are not the same thing. So the ULEZ zoning is absolutely about charging people for moving around. And I completely understand the issues around payment and inclusion and the wrong people, if you like, being penalised in essence. But that is not what the 15-minute city is about. The 15-minute city is about...
But that's the way they are being implemented. Look at Leeds. That's exactly how they're being implemented. It's all about money. It's all about finance.
Well, that is not what's happening in other countries and or other jurisdictions, and it is not the origin of the idea of the 15-minute city.
No, but it's what they want to do in this country. They want to follow the lead of Sadiq Khan in London, and they want to make money out of the people who can least afford it. I have colleagues in London who work and cannot work because they're being priced out, because they can't move around as they used to do. What about freedom of movement?
Freedom of movement is absolutely part of the 15-minute city. So I think we're actually...
No, it isn't. You can't zone people and say you cannot move.
That is not what's happening, and that is not what the 15-minute
That is exactly what's happening.
Arthur, let's Niamh finish her answer, please.
Certainly. Okay, so the 15-minute city is, first of all, not about restricting movement of any kind. The 15-minute city is about people having access to the things they need to lead their daily lives close by. So they don't have to spend time commuting, spending money on petrol, wasting time that they could be doing other things. So that's the first thing. That's the 15-minute city.
Let's time going around the ring road.
You've made that point, Arthur. Let's bring in James now. James, I think Niamh is trying to say that Arthur is conflating the low traffic neighbourhoods kind of zoning with 15-minute cities, and coming up with the wrong answer there. James?
Well, there are all these words for it: low traffic networks, 15-minute cities, ULEZ, and all of these things. But the fact is that an urban theory about how we would like cities to be, where we could all walk to the local croissant shop and never get in a car again, that's one thing. The reality on the ground, as your Druid contributor suggests, is that people are very restricted in their movement by ideological initiatives such as a 15-minute city. If you actually Google 15-minute city, you'll find that anybody who objects to it, Druid or in my case somebody on the left, is regarded as a conspiracy theorist, because we all believe only that it's follow the money. And I think our Druid friend here is wrong about that. It's not just money, it's the ideology of disdain for car users, wanting to suppress car use. And it's an ideology very proper to people who live in big cities like Dublin or Milan or Paris, where it originated, or London, people who are entirely unfamiliar with what it's like to be in Dudley or in parts of Yorkshire or in Rotherham and places like that, where you really rely upon a car to have access to all the big amenities. Of course, Vancouver is very European, and therefore we can all hope that the croissant shop will be round the corner. But it's completely utopian, and it's really disdainful for countryside livers, for women who rely on cars to move around with their children and with the people that they're caring for. The main advance in car use since the 70s in the UK has been among women. I've got to hear from advocates of the 15-minute city just how it will empower grandmothers, newlyweds, and anybody who's disabled. It's a really authoritarian restriction on our right to use the mode of transport that we choose, and we must do that. Any talk about net zero as a reason for doing this is only a smokescreen to restrict our right to drive where we want, when we want, without a filter, without a CCTV camera, without fines, without penalties, without impossible parking systems, which they make discriminate against old users of cars, because nobody can fathom how to use these new parking meters.
Okay, let's bring in...
let's get real about this.
Well, let's get real. Let's get real. Let's bring in Brent Toderian now. Brent, you spent years as Vancouver's chief city planner, if you like, and you have real-world experience in trying to make these things work. What's your view of 15-minute cities? Are they, as Arthur would say, a complete nightmare, money-making operation that actually elongates people's journeys, or are they going to take us into some sort of utopia?
Neither, and I got to tell you, this conversation we're having is a perfect example of what's happening around the world, where conversations and debates are making us dumber instead of smarter. We're being told, don't call anybody a conspiracy theorist, and then they spread fear-mongering and conspiracy theories.
Who did that?
And when people try to say the facts, they get yelled over, just like one of the panelists today has tried to do.
What was the conspiracy?
Okay, hang on, guys. Let's hear Brent out. He's been very patient. Brent, the floor is yours, and then I will give James an opportunity to respond. Go ahead, Brent.
What was the conspiracy?
This is the tactic.
We'll come to that, James.
This is the common tactic. As soon as people try to clarify, and by the way, I don't clarify. I'm glad to tell you that 15-minute cities is just about neighborhoods that have things you can walk to, that you actually have the choice to walk or take public transit instead of being car dependent. But anytime we talk about making cities and communities less car dependent, the usual suspects pop up and they start talking about the disabled being taken away their rights and autocratic rule and charging and chips in your vaccines. It's crazy. It is legitimately crazy. And then when you try to clarify, they just try to talk over you. They just try to yell you.
So could you take a moment? Could you take a moment just to explain the benefits then, and why James's objections are in your?
The benefit is choice. We're talking about taking a pattern since the 1960s where the car has been the only rational choice, and we tend to equate that with freedom. But try to get around if you don't drive or don't want to drive for any reason at all. That's called car dependency. What complete communities or the city of short distances, this is a very old idea, long before Paris, that basically just makes our communities more self-reliant. And then what's happened in Oxford is they have equated it with something else, which is traffic restrictions. And then they've yelled their arms and said, oh my God, you're taking away our rights to drive. 15-minute cities are about choice. Low traffic neighborhoods are about traffic restrictions. Now, if you want to have a debate about traffic restrictions, have that debate, but stop lying and saying that's what 15-minute cities are.
Well, Brent, let me ask you something. If you're building 15-minute cities, in other words, if you're carving up cities into smaller components so that everyone can get to all their amenities by walking or riding within 15 minutes, how do you enforce that? Where is the enforcing of that?
There's no carving. There's no carving and there's no enforcement. This is about choice. This is about looking at our neighborhoods and looking at neighborhoods that there's no school to walk to, there's no grocery store to walk to, there's no employment, it's all bedroom community, and every place you go, you pretty much have to go by car. And frankly, someone mentioned rural areas and such. This isn't about rural areas. This is about urban places where you can add uses like a grocery store, or add some employment in your neighborhood and your community, so at least you have the possibility of walking to it or riding or taking public transit. And by the way, you're probably going to drive too, because driving is just part of getting around. Now, that is the 15-minute city concept. If you want to attack that honestly.
Let me bring up a couple of...
Don't equate it with traffic restrictions that are happening in Oxford.
Understood. Let me bring up a couple of objections that James mentioned. What if you are elderly or disabled, or you have little children, you need your car to get to these facilities? What will happen for those people?
Well, let's have two different answers then. In the 15-minute city concept, which is what you said you wanted to talk about today, you will have that choice. You will always have that choice because nobody's taking that choice away from you. This is the lie that's being told to you. On the other hand, if you're asking me about traffic restrictions, low traffic neighborhoods like Oxford implemented several years before they started even using the term 15-minute cities, then you're quite right. You have to drive out to the ring road and drive around. And what this is a concept of reducing traffic in neighborhoods to make those neighborhoods more livable, reducing pollution, reducing car accidents, etc., and basically getting rid of what's called rat running or cross through traffic in your neighborhoods where people are trying to go through your neighborhood.
Just a quick question,
to get somebody to some other neighborhood.
I'm going to bring
that is a different thing. Low traffic neighborhoods is a different thing. Stop calling it 15-minute cities.
James, have your fears been allayed now by Brent?
No, well, I think I'm sorry I interrupted our Canadian friend, but the point is this, that it doesn't matter what you call it, there's a war on the car at the moment. It's nice to hear from Mr. Vancouver that disabled people are the usual suspects rounded up by conspiracy theorists against the 15-minute city. But that's a very disdainful view of the disabled. I'm surprised to hear it from a Canadian. But it's also disdainful, as he hinted. If I may finish, it was also disdainful precisely to rural dwellers, because rural dwellers do not live in cities, but some of them actually drive into cities. And the restrictions that are quite consonant with the 15-minute concept, the restrictions that are imposed through low traffic networks, bollards, and exclusion zones are going to discriminate against people who live in the countryside. It's a fact. You can try to separate the concept, but on the ground, as our Druid friend says, that's exactly how the ideology of...
Let's give Arthur a chance to come in now. Arthur, come in.
Right, I live in a rural area and I ride a motorcycle. And one of the things I done back in the 1990s with the aid of a young barrister who went on to be leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, I took him to the European Court over the byways open to all traffic here at Stonehenge that were closed over the solstices and equinoxes. And they still bring in traffic restrictions to do it now. And this is in a rural area. So we have our own problems with traffic restrictions. We don't need traffic restrictions and more traffic restrictions every time I ride into a city. I happen to live in a city, in a rural area. I live in Salisbury. What am I supposed to do? Go round the ring road all the time? It's ridiculous.
Niamh, a couple of quick questions.
Because you say... Our Canadian friend says that we're talking about two different issues, and I agree. We should be talking about two different issues, but look at the way it's being implemented here in the United Kingdom. Okay. It's not being implemented as two different issues. They are bringing traffic restrictions in with the whole idea and the excuse of a 15-minute city.
OK, you've made your point. Niamh, quick question that people have asked me to ask you, which is, why is it when cars are moving into a new electric, cleaner era, are you making, or governments around the world, redoubling efforts to exclude them in this way?
It's a very good question, Matthew. And just before I answer it, I'd like to come back on James's point about people. I am a mum of some young kids living in a suburban area where I have to drive my kids to school and then I have to drive on to work. And I don't necessarily want to do that. In fact, one of the things that I really enjoyed about the lockdowns, how horrific they were, but I was able to walk my kids to school because I had the time to do that, because I was working from home. Now, I can't do that on a normal day. I have to get into my car to make those journeys, and I don't necessarily want to do that. So I have firsthand experience. This is not just an urban theory. Getting back to your point about how we actually manage and why this is the case. It's the case for a number of reasons. I think Brent alluded to it. It's about livability. It's about the kind of neighbourhoods we want to live in. Do you want to have the freedom to walk around, know your children are safe, they can play outside, they're not going to be knocked over by the SUV coming flying down the road? That's one thing. The other thing is, electric cars are fine, and there is a move to that, and that's great in terms of much cleaner technologies. But there's still quite a lot of emissions from electric cars. They still cost a huge amount of money. I'm not entirely sure what the price point for an electric car in the UK or in Canada is, but here it's absolutely unaffordable. My car is a diesel car. I'm not changing anytime soon because I could not afford to change to an electric car. So there's an inclusion issue there. Why should people be forced into spending tens of thousands of pounds or euros on electric cars if there are better facilities in place close to them so they don't have to do that. So this comes back to the point of not having to be car dependent. If you want to get in your car and drive, that's fine, but you shouldn't be forced into your car to access the basic daily things that you need. So I think there's a combination of things going on here. There's a combination of people wanting a better quality of life, wanting to have neighbourhoods they know their kids are safe in, wanting to be able to get to their daily facilities and amenities without having to get in their car and getting into traffic congestion. So to have those choices is essentially what the 15-minute city is about. It's about addressing health issues. It's about getting kids out walking, getting people out on bicycles, helping address some of the obesity issues that are chronic in Western society. So it's a lot more than it's about active mobility as well as about environmental issues.
Niamh and all our other guests, thank you so much for your contributions to the Nexus today. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode again or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Till next week then, goodbye.